Well, really, up until this point, Solomon's been offering us a pretty depressing view of life. Well, as he puts it, life under the sun, a life that is hemmed in by the borders of this age. And the basic point that he's been wrestling with through the first couple of chapters of Ecclesiastes is simply the fact that if you die, if at the end of it all you simply die, well, that kind of relativizes everything, doesn't it? Like anything that we accomplish, any progress that we make, any contribution that we offer, it's all rendered futile by the fact that at the end of it all, we simply face the grave. And that's the hard lesson that Solomon, who is facing the grave, has learned as he reflects back over the years of his life. Recently, it seems that Solomon has come to realize that he's been trapped, limited by the limitations of this age. And as he looks back over the years, he realizes that actually even time has been a tyrant, just marking out his relentless progress towards the grave. Yes, says Solomon, there is a time to be born. But there is also a time to die. And here he is, an old man getting ready to die, preparing for death. And he's filled with regret. And he looks back over his life and sees that even time itself was something that he's actually lived his life alienated from, which is, again, a very common and very contemporary experience. You know, how often do we complain that we never have enough hours in the day? Where did the years go? Isn't it strange how often we can feel that time is against us? That we never have enough time to do everything that we think we're supposed to do. And that is a cause of such stress and anxiety and worry for us. And there's the sense that time can either drag or accelerate depending on how we feel about what we anticipate the future to hold. And it can feel kind of that we've just figured out how to live in this season of life, and suddenly time carries us forward to the next one. And that's the point. Time just carries us relentlessly forward, which makes it hard to enjoy anything because we know that sooner or later it will be over. And because we can be so fearful about what the future holds when this time is over. Sure, today might be a time to laugh, but tomorrow might be a time to weep. And time will carry me into tomorrow, whether I want to go there or not. And so it's easy to kind of develop an attitude that says, well, look, the best that you can do is enjoy the good times while they last and hope that the bad times don't come for a while. But the bad times do come. You know, Solomon tells us that in Ecclesiastes 3. There is a time, yes, there's a time for peace, for mending, for building, and for healing. But there's also a time for war. There's a time that is set for tearing down. That there will be a time for killing, and there will be a time that is characterized by hatred. And once we realize that, well, this world can suddenly become a very frightening place. And the weariness of it all just wears Solomon down. Like, what does a worker get from their toil? I've seen the burden that God has laid on the human race. But Solomon's also raised the possibility, hasn't he? A possibility of living differently. A way of lifting our eyes above the horizons of this age. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if instead of everything being relativized by death, that there was a way in which death itself could be relativized? Wouldn't it be amazing if there was a way for the decisions that we make here and now in this age to have a significance and a purpose beyond the grave? Wouldn't it be amazing if there was a way of living that connected us not just with this world, but with the world beyond. Not just with this time, but with the time beyond this time. And that's what Solomon says. God has set eternity in the human heart. It's like we were thinking last time. If we can accept meaning and significance and purpose as a gift from God, well, then we can find meaning and significance and purpose in any circumstance that we find ourselves in. If we can answer this echo of eternity that sounds in the depths of our being, then that could redeem even our relationship with time, as well as everything that time carries us into and carries us through, even death. All right, even as time carries us forward to and towards our grave, then we can discover that even our death has purpose in the economy and in the wisdom of God. You see, Solomon isn't saying that, look, we can have all the answers here and now. I mean, again, he tells us in Ecclesiastes 3, no one can fathom what God is doing from beginning to end. But what he is saying is that we can learn to live with wisdom in every moment, every chapter of our life. That we can discover God's purposes in each moment and how we can learn to live in the light of those purposes. It's like Jesus, isn't it? It's like Jesus who knew, well, let's just take one example from Ecclesiastes 3. Jesus knew that there was a time to speak. Right? He taught, he commanded, he rebuked, he instructed, he healed. He did it all with words. But Jesus also understood that there was a time to be silent. Before Pilate, we're told, Jesus made no reply. See, Jesus understood that there was a time to speak and there was a time to be silent. And he understood God's purposes in both of those moments. See, for Jesus, time wasn't a meaningless thing, just an arbitrary sequence of events, just relentlessly carrying us forward. And still less was time an enemy for Jesus. You know, Jesus knew when his hour was. He knew that his Father had, from all eternity, ordered and ordained the days of his life. That the Father had made everything beautiful or appropriate or just perfect in its time. And that allowed Jesus to rest secure in knowing that there was purpose in every moment, that there was a time for everything, and that everything would happen in its time. It meant that in each moment there was purpose for Jesus to discover and to embrace. That's so different, isn't it, from the stress and the anxiety of the way in which we so often live in relationship with time. But in Jesus, we see the way of wisdom. And that way gave Jesus the confidence that even what seemed like the most mundane moments, in fact, even the most painful moments of struggle and sorrow and suffering, even those could have meaning and significance and purpose. You see, for Jesus, there was a time to be born and there was a time to die. And both those moments had such meaning. His birth that seemed so insignificant was full of significance. His death that could have looked so meaningless was full of meaning. And because his birth and death have significance and meaning, well, that gives significance and meaning to everything.